Welcome back to the work week. Inflation drops as that carbon tax data starts to show up in the data. There will be a budget in the fall after all. And the FBI looks north in the ongoing drug crisis. And the Liberals now look to censor the internet. All that and more on The Really Big Show. I'm Jim Check with Now Media. With me, Ian Burns, our managing editor, all the way in our nation's capital out there in Ottawa. Beautiful day in the Okanagan, traffic flowing nicely in our live shot back there. How is the weather and the climate in Ottawa?
It's not too pretty. I think Mark Carney chose the right time to go to Rome. It's been unseasonably cold and not very sunny here, so it's a bit drab.
There you go. So get ready to get into it. It is Monday, May 20th here. We just celebrated, it's Tuesday. What am I talking about? Monday was the holiday. It's Tuesday, May 20th, and we just celebrated Victoria Day. And we'll get into it here. We're going to start with the national news. In the national news, that inflation data is showing, the carbon tax data is now showing the inflation dropping. Who would have thought? After all the years of being told by the Liberal government that the carbon tax does not add to inflation, now they're saying, oh, well, see, look at how, like the carbon tax has reduced inflation here. Crazy.
I mean, that will never stop that will never cease to amaze me, that there was a genuine debate for a number of years about whether the carbon tax actually caused inflation. And there were very serious people, or people that take themselves very seriously, that said that it didn't. Or if it did, it was minuscule, just a tiny, tiny minor effect. And anybody that disagrees is some kind of conspiracy theorist or lunatic. I mean, just for a giggle, I was Googling a few. I was just had a quick, use that antiquated technology of Google search to have a look at some headlines. And just even like a couple of years ago, last year, like the Narwhal. I don't know if you know much about that publication, yeah, but a kind of like, environmentalist publication that's funded by our dear government. So if you don't know what it is, you pay for it. So you might, and everybody else listening to this also pays for it. But they had headlines saying like how, basically implying how stupid it was to believe that the carbon tax was causing inflation. I mean, I can't help but remember that time where Tiff Macklem was grilled. I think that was about 3 years ago now, 2 or 3 years ago, by a committee in the House of Commons. And it was like pulling teeth to try and get him to just admit the obvious, that it caused inflation. And he did, but it was still very ambiguous. It's still a very messy admission. But what a journey we've been on, eh? Now we see that without... let's have a look at the data. It says without the carbon tax, or without gas, so if you remove gas, inflation would have been 2.9%. So that's 1.2 percentage points higher, which is enormous. That's a gigantic gulf. So I don't know. There you go. I mean, it's just I'm glad that this period of our history is over now, and we can stop pretending that putting a tax on fuel doesn't increase inflation.
You can put that chart up there. Do you remember that the Liberals and the media put out that thing that included over 200 Canadian economists, that laureate economists, that said that carbon pricing policy, including the federal carbon tax, had minimal impact on inflation? Remember that? The letter emphasized that carbon pricing is an economically efficient tool for reducing greenhouse gases, and its contribution to inflation was negligible. That one should just be put up on a wall somewhere.
Well, at least it's done the first one there. Carbon emissions are down, aren't they? Aren't they, guys? Unfortunately, it didn't even do that. What a load of garbage. But this just tells you, doesn't it? There is nothing that people that call themselves experts won't tell you is true. There's nothing. Nothing's off limits. They will tell you absolutely anything, including during the pandemic. I mean, who wasn't, to some extent radicalized, let's use that cheeky little verb, by the amount of times that they got things wrong and then stood there and told us that we were all stupid for seeing the obvious. I mean, enough is enough, surely, at this point. The sort of expert class the technocrats have disgraced themselves and shamed themselves for about 20 years now in a row. Like enough now. We can't be told anymore that the experts have decided what reality is, and the reality that we observe is not in fact reality. I don't think that can continue anymore after this.
Mark Carney argued with Vasi Capella, saying that the carbon tax had minimal effect on carbon emissions, and that's the reason they got rid of it. And they punished Canadians for how long with that carbon tax, and then argued with the help of 200 Canadian economists. Laurie, I mean, they even said these were such special economists, and said that it didn't contribute. I mean, that again, like, somebody should go back to these 200 Canadian economists and ask them, what is this?
Indeed. But if there's a lesson to be learned here, don't just take things on faith because somebody with credentials tells you that it's true. Don't do that. We used to do that in the Middle Ages, but the person telling us was, a priest, and we used to just believe that. Can we move on from this nonsense and start
Experts.
thinking for ourselves? Read the George Orwell essay In Front of Your Nose, from a long time ago, from the 1940s, I think. But it basically nails it. Sometimes experts, so-called, can find themselves in a position where they deny what's in front of their nose, what's the most obvious thing in the world. They can find themselves denying it, and it's fundamentally down to ideology, I think. But it's also there's a lot of status games and credentials and all sorts. And like you see with Mark Carney, who's like, in many ways, Mark Carney is like the king of the expert class in Canada, at least. He's got the crown. But he reserves the right to dismiss other experts on a whim. For example, Trevor Tombe during the election, where a question was asked of Mark Carney in reference to something Trevor Tombe had said. Mark Carney responds saying, "Oh no, I've got more experience than him. He can shut up. I'm right. He's wrong." Okay, well, if Mark Carney can do that, we can all do that, surely. We can all dismiss an expert when what they say jars with reality, let's say.
This
And I would love to think that we can move away from this servile attitude where we all act like peasants receiving, the word from Moses on the hill. Let's just grow up a bit, start thinking for ourselves,
the,
please.
the compromised state-funded media has a lot of responsibility in this as well, for not asking the questions, for pushing the same narrative. And then I watched an interview with Mark Carney this past weekend, where the reporter says, "Oh, based on your vast experience," like, I'm just like, what kind of question is that? Based on your vast experience, what do you think about not tabling a budget this fall?
Yeah, that was in Rome, wasn't it? With all that, with the parakeets chirping in the background. I was amused by that as well, and that kind of chumminess that they have. They seem like masochists to me, though. The servile kind of court journalists, they
Yeah.
seem masochistic because all Carney ever does is mock them and dismiss them and sort of like talk around what they say and humiliate them. And yet they keep coming back for it, don't they? They love it, and then they come out with stuff like that, like you've got so much knowledge, and I don't know. It's again just one of those strange things to watch, isn't it?
Canadians should definitely take note of this and remember this. And go back and watch the clips when they argued and used those 200, and some of them were funded by the Canadian government as well. How they used those 200 economists saying that the carbon tax did not add to inflation. And that is a shameful period for both the media and the government for pushing that narrative.
It was a sacred cow, wasn't it, for the sort of the technocrats, the experts. It was a precious, almost like religious symbol to them, the carbon tax, and they were very reluctant to sacrifice it. But
Yeah.
what's next? My question is, what's next? We've had so many in recent years, like the Wuhan lab, masks. Well, I mean, so many to do with COVID. Now
Joe
we've just had
Biden. Joe
inflation.
Biden is cognitive.
Yeah, Joe Biden, that's another good one. Good, well remembered. He wouldn't have remembered that, but you did. Um, how many have we had? I want to know what's next. I'm very interested. I've got a feeling that next might be the very, very obvious, almost I would say in the full sense of this, accurate sense of this word, insane idea that Canadians can stop driving around, stop heating their homes with natural gas and so on, and that will have an effect on the global temperature. I've got a feeling that might just be the next sacred cow to be slaughtered before us, because that to me is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard.
The food professor had a tweet that he put out, and this guy watches food very well. It's a good account to follow on X. Because in the United States, energy prices have really plummeted, and that's really led to a drop in inflation. And since tariffs announced on both sides of the border, U.S. and food inflation has continued to decline, while Canada's has tripled. That is the one thing that's kind of hanging up there, is food inflation here in Canada. And Loblaws is trying to, get Canadians ready for increases in prices, and it doesn't make much sense, but yeah. And this one here, this is the chart Pierre Poilievre tweeted out there this past weekend too. Ireland now overtakes Canada in manufacturing.
What on earth do they manufacture in Ireland? I can't be the only person that couldn't name a single thing, unless Guinness counts as manufacturing.
I guess that would also show what Canada's manufacturing. Might be the... Do you know what I mean? And this EV mandate, we'll talk about it later in here. The EV mandate, if they don't drop that EV mandate, there will be no automobile. And that's one of the biggest manufacturing sectors left in Canada. Left in Canada, most of the other stuff, like obviously apparel's all gone to the Asian countries and that, China and Taiwan and all those places, or Thailand and that, like Lululemon and all those places are manufacturing there. So, like Bombardier might be some of that. And then the budget, no budget thing. We're on to that. Francois Philippe Champagne, in an interview with Vasi Capella, said there's no budget, just a fall economic statement. And we wonder why we didn't get a budget now as Parliament resumes. And he said they wouldn't even do that, and they wouldn't even do a fall budget. And then lots of blowback from economists and the media even on where's the budget? And of course, Pierre Poilievre pushing that point. And lo and behold, Mark Carney comes out again and corrects another minister. This is how many ministers has he corrected or had to fix some of the damage or do damage control?
Yeah. Oh, but I mean, I'm assuming you watched that entire Rome press conference, because he was asked about Gregor Robertson's comment, wasn't he, about house prices, about how he doesn't think house prices should come down. Carney's response to that wasn't to chastise Robertson. He entirely endorsed his position, actually, but he did it. I mean, he did it like a professor that doesn't really know what he's talking about, but wants to shut up a student who's asked an awkward question, which is kind of how he always acts, isn't it, Carney? Yeah. And he was just talking about, we want it to be affordable vis-a-vis the increase in salaries, which will be, it's just like incapable of speaking clear English. But yeah, so he didn't chastise him. But I don't really know if this is a chastisement of Champagne. I would imagine that this is more Carney's been told maybe that this is a really bad look. This is really stupid. Oh, no, and it's not just about Canadians who are upset. It's about international lenders and ratings agencies and that kind of thing.
I think the full plan was that they weren't going to do it, and then they seen the blowback, and then he just said, "Oh no, we're going to do it." And Champagne was the fall guy for it. It just blows me away. Like I talked on, I think, Friday and Thursday, like how the former Bank of Canada governor, a guy in finance, isn't going to table a budget. And then now they're saying it's only going to be kind of like a small budget because, they've only got a few short weeks to do this. You remember when Pierre Poilievre's promised that they were going to stay in Parliament till they accomplished a bunch of things. And they've been off for, 151 days so so
I mean, they've barely worked. That's the truth.
And
what they say in England when there's a soccer player that's not very good, they say he's been stealing a living. I would say Canada's entire political class has been stealing a living for about 6 months or more. Yeah.
So he's just saying, the House is going to be sit for like 3 weeks, so it's tough. Well, just have them sit longer. You've had half a year off, and it's just unbelievable.
He said Carney has just won an election based on this idea that this is the greatest crisis that we've faced since like the Second World War or something like that. Do you think during the Second World War, do you think people had like massive sabbaticals and really long summer and winter vacations? Obviously not, because there was a bloody war to win. For God's sake.
one of the things the Liberals have learned is to do a lot of stuff under the cover of darkness, and the more you have Parliament sitting, the more questions can be asked.
But also, I feel like for a technocrat like Mark Carney, Parliament, MPs, even ministers to some extent, just get in the way. They're just an obstacle. Whereas when they're gone, he can just get on with what he wants to do and act more like a kind of central bank governor. I feel like that's probably his preference, and as I said that months ago, I presume that's how he's going to govern, and it does really look like that's the case. And he's also, obviously he's being told from time to time, isn't he, to be politically savvy, but I don't think in general that he's particularly savvy in that sense. Whereas for Pierre Poilievre to have said that was very savvy, wasn't it, politically? But I just feel like Carney, he just doesn't really play that game, does he?
We got a clip here from Kash Patel, the FBI director here, talking about the drug crisis. So we're going to play this clip.
In the first 2-3 months that we've been in the seat under Donald Trump's administration, he has sealed the border. He has stopped border crossings. So where's all the fentanyl coming from still? Where's the trafficking coming from still? Where are all the narco traffickers going to keep bringing this stuff into the country? The northern border. Our adversaries have partnered up with the CCP and others, Russia, Iran, on a variety of different criminal enterprises, and they're sailing around to Vancouver and coming in by air. And the sheer tyranny of distance of the northern border and the lack of cooperation from federal authorities in prior administrations to actually firm up that northern border is what's causing a continuation of violent crime. Now, we're focused on it, and we're calling our state and local law enforcement partners up there. But you know who has to get to step in is Canada, because they're making it up there and shipping it down here. And I don't care about getting into this debate about making someone the 51st state or not, but they are our partner in the north. And say what you want about Mexico, but they helped us seal the southern border. The facts speak for themselves. The border that's open, I'll give you a statistic that I gave to Congress that nobody was paying attention to. Over 300 known or suspected terrorists crossed into this country last year illegally. Known or suspected terrorists, not illegals. Not just illegals, known or suspected terrorists. 85% of them came in through the northern border. Wow. This year, 100 known.
There you go. Let's put out that tweet there from Elinor Sturko. Put that up on the. So this is MLA Elinor Sturko from the BC Conservative Party. United States official have issued a stark warning to Prime Minister Mark Carney that law enforcement crackdowns at the Mexican border have led to an increase in foreign-backed drug production in BC. And well, obviously we know that one that was close to us here in Kelowna was the Super Lab there in Falkland, BC.
Yeah, I mean, it's undoubtedly an issue, isn't it, with this particular drug, fentanyl, which can be manufactured anywhere. That is such a disaster, isn't it, that sort of technology, let's call it, is available. And it's a lot easier, isn't it, to stamp out cocaine and heroin and all the rest of it, because they have to be grown in certain climates. But this one, yeah. But I would say for Kash Patel, if you were walking down Vancouver East Side, you're having a little plod, just taking in the sights, and he came up to you and said, "Excuse me, sir," what would your reaction be? Because I can tell you, I would run. He looks like an absolute nutcase. He is absolutely off his head, and not only that, but completely full of you know what, just absolute garbage. Saying the words, "Say what you want about Mexico." Shut up. It all comes from Mexico. That's the only thing that needs to be said about Mexico. Like almost every single border problem that the Americans have comes from Mexico. You can't start a sentence with "say what you want about Mexico." What a clown. What an absolute clown. I can't believe people of that caliber are in positions of power like that in the United States. It's just, it blows me away. I can't maintain full stop with people like that.
But let's put up that other tweet there from Elinor as well. But we have to recognize that the NDP, BC NDP Premier David Eby's policies on drug have definitely led to some of this kind of like, BBC, was it BBC? I can't remember. An English paper did a piece on Vancouver as one of the fentanyl capitals of the world.
Telegraph.
The Telegraph, yeah. I mean, this drug experiment in British Columbia has backfired on the NDP.
Yeah, that's undoubtedly an issue. But they do this in the US as well, so that's obviously not. In terms of our relations with the US, that's that's a red herring, as they say. It's just
There is
the American.
very little
I don't know.
inspection.
You just have to think, what's the ulterior motive here? And I have a feeling that it might be Kash Patel, Trump, all the rest of them. They are nowhere near competent enough to deal with the crises that face the United States, and that includes the border, which is what they won the election on. So I suppose it's kind of like, what do we do? Oh, let's just kick Canada. We might as well do that. That's not something that people have done very often. We can make it seem like a conspiracy, and all the servile clowns that follow us around and believe everything we say will just believe it because they're morons.
We do
So
have to
I've got
admit,
a feeling that it might be a bit of that.
we do have to admit, some officials have said that there's like 5% of the sea cans are inspected, and almost 0% of the trains are inspected. So
Yeah, well, but we've been that's been a discussion point for many years, hasn't it, in Canada? But that still doesn't change the fact that more bad stuff comes south to north and north to south, and the Americans never want to talk about that, do they? They're just, I mean, I have more reasonable conversations with my 3-year-old son than I would with the Americans. They're just playing silly buggers. How do you even speak to people who are so committed to being so obtuse?
So we talk
just
about
kind of let them get on with it, I think.
we talk about Donald Trump and that, and then how Mark Carney used the fear of Trump to win this election. And now the National Post put out an article and said that he literally told Trump that he's going to talk bad about Trump to help win the election. And that's a National Post article. I mean, that's out there everywhere as well. And he's pretty cozy with J.D. Vance there as well. And the language has completely changed, how we need to work together to build a better future for both nations, as opposed to the world was ending.
I mean, who could possibly have predicted that this was the case with Mark Carney and the Liberals? I wonder what genius could have predicted that several months ago.
And then the Liberals are quietly bringing back Bill C-63. Well, Bill C-18 is still in existence, even though I think almost anybody in Canada now sees that Bill C-18 is a failure, including when we interviewed all the candidates here, including the new Liberal MP here, Stephen Fuhrer, have said Bill C-18 needs to go. Yet, there's no talk of removing Bill C-18, but there is talk about Bill C-63, the Online Harms Act.
Yeah, there's a lot of unloved legislation that's just kind of lingers on. And then the excuse is always, oh, we've got this massive crisis with the US. We don't have time for that. But we do have time to go on holiday for a very long time and just never be in Parliament and never create any laws.
Slide these bills through. Let's play this clip here from Stephen Guilbeault.
Spending requirements. It's not about content moderation.
So I'm going to flip the question for a moment here, Minister, because it was important enough to put that exclusion there in the first place. Now it's gone. Why was it important in the first place to put it there?
We're not interested. I mean, it's not what the bill is about.
I mean, I hear you saying you're not interested, but there literally was an exclusion that was put in the original iteration of that bill, the thing that was reviewed, and then it got to committee, and bingo, bango, bongo, the exclusion is gone. So why was it important to put it there in the first place, such that now the committee has removed it?
Well, I mean, the committee decides what they want. The bill, first of all, the committee hasn't even finished doing its work in terms of the amendments. So we don't have a full picture of what the bill will look like when it comes back to the House of Commons for third reading.
Would you like to see the exclusion back in there?
It's not necessary. I mean, so
if it's not necessary, why was it there in the first place?
Well, we've worked on this for many months. We came up with what we thought would be the best possible bill, but bill can always be perfected. They will be amended, and it's not the purpose of the bill. So it's not required to be there because, I mean, again, this idea that the CRTC would start doing content moderation has no basis in reality. In its 40 years.
I have a tough time watching him.
If if I think about that too seriously, I would genuinely start to weep. I think, because to think that that's the Canadian elite, that people like that are literally in charge of our lives.
So
I mean, it's kind of like staring into the abyss, that, isn't it? It's agony to do that.
He obviously is trying to figure out how to lie his way out of that, because he's the same guy that told us 200 Canadian economists have said that the carbon tax does not add to the inflation numbers, and also told us that how important it was, and that it is the single most important thing to do to reduce carbon emissions before the world comes to an end. And also the guy that said there should be no more investment in roadways across Canada, that nobody needs a car. Like, this is the guy that's now in charge of the internet in Canada. What are we going to get out of this guy?
I mean, like I say, we don't want to make people cry on a Tuesday morning, do we? Oh, afternoon.
Literally, Bill C-18 is crushing media, all media, and then the government selectively funds some, not us, and selectively funds some, but takes away the traffic from most, basically choking off independent media. I mean, if you look at the results of it, you have to wonder if that's not the ultimate goal, because why are they still continuing with Bill C-18? And now here they come with Bill C-63, and they're taking out pieces that protect freedom of speech and that. Like, it makes no sense. And then this is the guy that lied to Canadians for how long on the effects of inflation, on the carbon tax on inflation.
Well, and the big lie, with a capital B and a capital L, which is that Canada can do anything at all to bring down the world temperature. Like, that's not within our power. It's not something that we can do in Canada. But he has repeatedly come out with that lie. Just to quickly go back there to the Online Harms Act, which you mentioned, I think that's more serious than, possibly even more serious than Bill C-18, actually.
No,
but
for sure.
That is, I mean, all I have to say there, we don't have to go on a big ramble about the importance of freedom of expression and all the rest of it. Just look at England. Just look at England, because they have something very similar. And a police officer, a retired police officer, was arrested not so long ago by police officers that went into his house and looked at his bookshelf. You can read the story, just Google it, you'll find it quite quickly. They looked at his bookshelf and found that he had books by pretty sort of moderate conservative writers like Douglas Murray, who I assume most people have heard of by now. And they were looking at it and they were like collecting it and saying, like, oh, look at this material. And they like referred to it as Brexity, because in England, the Brexit vote was a bit of a divide between right and left, with right more inclined to vote for Brexit. It's just imagine that in this country for a second. Imagine somebody coming to police coming to your house and looking through your bookshelf and being like, oh, this is interesting, like revolutionary thought here. I'm not sure I like that. I mean, that should frighten everybody. That should frighten the whole world. I know that's England, but that should frighten the whole world, especially when you think that Mark Carney was a British citizen, his wife's British, spent a lot of time in Britain as a governor of the Bank of England, and seems to really follow British politics very closely. So be afraid. If that goes ahead, be afraid. Be very, very afraid.
That might be the end of this show as well. Like our memes.
Could be the end of. It could be the end of a lot of things. It could be the end of people using X, Twitter, whatever. It could be the end, because that's where most of these come from in England. People write tweets, like pretty innocuous tweets, and then the police come around and arrest them. It's just like, it's not like they're saying, I'm going to kill the Prime Minister on this day, I've got these explosives. It's not like they're doing that. They're saying like really tame things, like the sort of thing that you will hear in real life all the time.
I just accused Stephen Guilbeault of lying. I mean, they would probably see that as,
Yeah. They'd have you. They'd have you for it.
Non-conforming, right?
Well, they'd say that they could maybe crimes against the climate, maybe a climate crime, because I'm dismissing the idea that Canada can have an effect on the global temperature. I'm done for, mate. I'm finished.
Your boss is coming to town, and he actually visited Canada House there in London. We got a little clip here to play for you. There you go.
Anticlimactic, wasn't it? Like screeching girls, as if it's like the Beatles going to get out of the car, and it's just it's just as an old man sort of wobbling along.
I wonder if that's a soundtrack.
Yeah, maybe from the Beatles era.
The Beatles, because it seems like a lot of young
that's
people.
Obviously, yeah, that's obviously preparation, isn't it? Or it's somehow connected anyway to his visit next week to Ottawa.
Yeah, that's for sure. Getting ready. Get ready. Get ready, and then your favorite mayor, the Toronto mayor, is getting this. We're going to play this clip first, and then we'll talk about it.
This is exciting because I'm in front of a construction site. It's home to 55 seniors. They're going to move in early spring next year. We're building it, and Whitqueen Community Center, a very well-known, very good social service agency, is going to come and operate it. These seniors that are going to be here will get comprehensive support, whether they need mental health or any other kind of services. So, yay! This is exciting.
There you go. How exciting. Seniors can look forward to living in a steel box before they move into a wooden box.
That includes her. She's a senior, isn't she? So it must include her then.
Like I said, this is what we can look forward to. Pottersville, where your new home is stacked sea cans.
She was. I don't know if we've. Or what the point is really to mention this, but she was Jack Layton's wife, wasn't she? I wonder what he would think of that. Would that be his sort of thing?
It just blows me away that this is something that they're like proud of. It's like, this is what we do for our seniors after they've worked in Canada for their whole lives, and they can look forward to a stacked sea can.
Yeah, well, I mean, even some of the sort of townhouses and like row houses and whatnot that are built nowadays, I look at them and I'm just thinking, like, that is such a downgrade. That's such a downgrade on what houses used to be. Because these are like houses in the suburbs as well. Well, and I mean, that's like, obviously apartments are the next level, aren't they? Like we see being thrown up in Kelowna and places like that.
And that's part of the Liberal platform, was to $25 billion in easy financing for modular home builders, in which Brookfield happens to be one of the largest modular home builders. So look forward to that. Sea cans and modular homes, 250 square foot shoe boxes, so that you can raise your family in. Well, I guess you're not supposed to have any kids, right?
But, yeah, I was going to say, man, you're starting to, now and then, you start to move towards the far right a little bit, don't you, when you say things like that? Having children.
Having children, yeah.
Come on. All right, Goebbels, mate. Bloody hell.
Yeah, so to me, like, that's where we're putting our seniors. Why don't we just go right to the wooden box? Never mind, because we do have made in Canada.
Well, you can't do any work in a wooden box, can you?
No, yeah, I guess Walmart greeter. Brett Wilson, former, very politically active Brett Wilson, says Canada Post strike notes from unions and workers that plan to walk out on Friday. And that's the same union that messed up Christmas for so many people. There you go.
Well, nothing's changed. It's the same lay of the land as it was then, really, isn't it? This was just a temporary measure that was put in place. So yeah. We're basically just back to December or whatever it was.
I mean, I think there's $1 billion worth of debt sitting there. And it's highly unprofitable, and a workforce that wants more, and I don't know where we get it from.
Well, the thing is, they refuse. When I was chatting to somebody from Canada Post, the idea is that they need to compete with the American ones, like UPS and all the rest of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, who deliver on like the weekends and later on in the day and stuff like that. That's the problem, is that the Canada Post workers don't want to do that. They want to keep it sort of just during the work week, and obviously that's a very old system that was pretty futuristic, wasn't it, and up to date in the 19th century, but it doesn't really work now.
Well, at least you would say they're better than liberal government. They only want to work half the time and then take 151 days off, come back for 3 weeks, and then take the summer off.
Yeah, Canada Post just want weekends off. By comparison, they're like
they're
some
like
of the hardest workers in Canada.
Yeah, they're the hardest working in the federal government for sure.
Yeah.
They actually still have to come to work every day. Like we did that story back in December that said the Department of Defense, they're supposed to come in 3 days a week, and only 10% of them actually showed up for work for the 3 days a week. So that's the DND.
Yeah, it was a low amount.
So these postal workers actually have to show up for work, same as the actual military. They have to go, do their work out in the field, whereas the federal workers and the politicians don't even show up for work.
Yeah. It's bananas, isn't it? But it would be sad. I was thinking about this today, just this morning. I was thinking, like, if Canada Post died, that would be sad, wouldn't it? Because we're talking a lot about national unity.
Yeah.
That is one of the few like institutions that stretches across the whole country, isn't it?
We just lost Hudson Bay.
Yeah, that's another one. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then that speaks to our climate and our economy. That's what it speaks to, and that's the sad reality. But I mean, instead of modernizing Canada Post, which they need to do, they need to find leadership in there that can actually speak with the union and say, hey, the only way we survive is we have to change. We have to change as well. Like, we're going through a crisis as well here at Now Media with Bill C-18 still choking us off. Like, we have to adapt, and that's the sad reality of everything. And then, let's talk about the Coutts border here for a second. Chris Carbert, who was convicted of mischief over $5,000 possession of a weapon dangerous to the public, was told by the parole board that he has demonstrated a lack of accountability in his actions in 2022.
Yeah, I mean, it won't surprise many people to learn that this is being taken up, and people are saying that it's kind of, two-tier or whatever, that it's like he's not being treated the way that other prisoners are being treated. And that's because of, like, for political reasons, because he challenged, in effect, he was part of a group that challenged the authority, really, of the federal government, you might say. And as a consequence, so the argument goes, he's being punished more severely. But, you read his the report that was given to the parole board, and apparently he's Mr. Goody Two Shoes. He's doing he's like very respectful to authority, it says, and he does everything that's asked of him in prison. But so usually that would mean automatic parole, wouldn't it? That's usually how these things work, but not in his case.
He needs to be made an example. They have spoken from up high. And we're going to move on to our British Columbia news. We're going to focus on British Columbia news, and we're going to try to do these in segments here. John Rustad says, big week for EB's NDP. And I haven't seen this yet. New NDP car tax to make driving more expensive in BC. I don't know if I haven't seen that yet. Caught cutting shady $300,000 deal with EB's sketchy DTS consultant friend. And huge pushback in Bill 14 and 15 power grab. And NDP MLA says all First Nations BCers are uninvited guests to Canada. That one got a lot of publicity. We're going to play this little clip here from Mr. Rustad, though.
Hi, everyone. John Rustad here. I hope you're enjoying this beautiful May Day long weekend. As you're out and about enjoying the weekend, I thought I would give you a quick update on 4 things that we've discovered the NDP are up to. First is they have decided to bring in a vehicle levy. What that means is a new tax on your vehicle just for the privilege of owning a vehicle in British Columbia. This will be an annual tax. This will add hundreds of dollars to a family. Families in British Columbia are already within $200 of not being able to pay their bills. More taxation is not the answer. We need to get our mines open. We need to get LNG going. We need to get our forestry back up and running in this province. We need to drive investment for the private sector, whether that's in small businesses, whether that's in technology. It's the only way that we can generate the revenues to pay for things in this province without doing more NDP taxation. Second thing they've done, they've decided to move forward with hiring an insider, a friend of David Eby's, simply to give advice on the downtown east side of Vancouver. This is a horrible situation down there, but paying somebody $300,000 to simply give a phone call to a minister once a month, no accountability, no need to do any kind of written reports, no way to be able to judge that this individual is actually providing any value for money. This is the kind of patronage that is not needed in British Columbia. Yet David Eby is just moving forward this and trying to hide it. Third thing they're doing, they're continuing moving forward with legislation in British Columbia to override environmental assessments, to override any kind of scrutiny. Community leaders, First Nation leaders, business leaders, people from around this province are pushing back, saying this is not the right answer. This is not what we should be doing. This needs to come to an end. This kind of oversight, need for oversight, I should say, must be in place.
There you go. There's Conservative leader John Rustad.
Sounds like he was on a particularly brisk walk there.
Yeah.
Maybe you should do the next one sitting down.
All the politicians seem to think they saw that one video where somebody does the walk and talk thing. Trudeau used to do those all the time. And I think Pierre Poilievre was doing them too, like this walking and talking thing. I don't know. I think just sit down.
I mean, of these ones, I'd say the most important one. I mean, this idea of a car tax, I think that's very much speculative, isn't it? I mean, there's been no formal announcement on that. That would be quite huge, though, wouldn't it? And very unpopular, I'm sure.
33 new taxes. Hey, 33 new taxes since they've been in, so that would just be number 34. Because the NDP, very little right now in a plan to drive investment, but like we talked about so many times, is the only thing they also can do is just squeeze the taxpayer a little bit more.
Yep, and it just so happens that when they aim for something to tax, they tend to they aim for something that will affect the most people because that will raise the most revenue.
Yeah.
And then they've got cars and they can just say, oh, climate change.
It's just a couple $100 more. But when it came to doling out that $1,000 that was promised, that's way too much. But you can afford a couple $100 here, a couple $100 here, and a couple more $100 here. And then don't forget to tax the small businesses till they can't even afford to hire any employees. So,
I mean, unless they do a sort of graduated or what they would call progressive sort of fee structure, so that based on your taxes, if you earn beneath a certain amount, maybe then you don't pay a fee for your car or whatever. Like they tend to like that strategy nowadays, don't they? Because it divides the population up.
Yeah, so then you just push everybody down to that same level of standing there with the bowl and asking for more, please, Oliver.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, well, I mean, that would be very unpopular because obviously, and like I say, I mention this a lot, but Canada seems to follow England in so many ways. England seems to pioneer all the worst things in the West world, and then Canada follows. But there's car tax in England, and it is so unpopular. People absolutely despise that, and congestion charges and stuff like that. There's all kinds of these little taxes that are thrown onto cars in England, and it is so unpopular. It's extraordinarily unpopular. So
they're talking about taxing, well, first gas cars for driving into the city. They'll actually take a picture of your plate and they'll charge you for driving in the. I was in California, and so they got these. It's pretty. The traffic is absolutely like terrible there, but they got these fast lanes, like fast tracks. And you can go in, they not only HOV, but you can go in these fast track lanes, and I think it's like $5, $10, $15, depending how far you go. Like, so if you want to go in a lane that actually moves, it costs you money.
I mean, that's kind of that's like capitalism gone wrong a bit, isn't it? Like a
so
class for roads.
You look over there and you're just like, how are they going? Because it's like 3 hours to get to work, or that lane's moving. That's $15, and you're just like, pay the $15.
Yeah.
It's just, so the fast track lanes, HOV lanes, toll lanes, all kinds of stuff. And then some nations are actually doing that if you're driving into the city. I think they talked about it in Vancouver as well.
Yeah.
BC.
Well, that would be, they're doing that. They're doing that in Paris. They do it all over England. I wouldn't be surprised if that happened. And but the worst thing about that is that it erodes liberty fundamentally, doesn't it? That's like freedom to travel, which is even in the charter, isn't it?
Well,
But essentially that makes it harder for you to move around freely, and that's the thing that I find so corrosive about those taxes.
Well, the politicians in the elite class, they don't have to pay it because obviously you're paying it, so they'll get charged, and then you'll pay it from your tax dollars because it'll be all funded by the government. BC Hydro's challenge, powering the province through surging demand, drought, and a trade war. So, there's lots of concern over that, and especially when this EV mandate as well. Lots of people saying that there won't be enough power to do all that.
Especially interesting about this is something that most of us already know, but I think we need to know it more. We need to get it even deeper into our heads, which is that BC imports electricity from the United States. Yeah. What an insane situation that is. What an absolutely mad arrangement. I just can't believe that that's been allowed to happen. What a gigantic failure that is on the part of the BC governing class.
Yeah, BC's on track to be a net importer again this year, and this is when Doug Ford was threatening the United States with cutting off power. I'm not sure if he was aware of it or not, that British Columbia is a net importer of power from the United States. So we turn off a state, they turn off a province. Great.
I mean, it's just, BC is like blessed in so many ways, but it's got so much hydro, and it's also got so much LNG. I mean, it probably also got coal. I don't even know, but it's very blessed in terms of its gas and
big coal fields.
It's water, it's rivers, and yet here it finds itself begging from the United States for energy. I mean, that is such an indictment of the people that have been in charge of British Columbia.
Big coal fields there in the southeast of British Columbia and Fernie and Elkford.
Yeah, you're right, and I should have known that because I've been around there, and it's in the museum in where is it, Nelson or something? They talk about the coal mining.
A big mining area,
but I've forgotten.
Yeah, the Kootenays are a huge mining area. Lots of history there, including the one that started the TSX is the mine there, Red Mountain in Trail, BC. That started the TSX actually. That was an LSE listed stock at the time, Red Mountain, and it was a quick history. And the Red Mountain, there's a couple of prospectors mining or exploring on one mountain. They looked over and said, "Why is that mountain so red?" And obviously they went over there, and it was one of the huge deposits, and Red Mountain, and it's now a ski hill and all that too. Lots of history. It was listed on the London Stock Exchange, and that was the birthplace of the Toronto Stock Exchange. So there you go, some history. Mining stock, lo and behold, mining.
But BC was it was all about that sort of stuff, wasn't it? The interior, at least. But even the coast, it was all about natural resources. But mining was a big deal. It is in Nelson, that museum. I'm fairly sure it is anyway. I'm 90% sure. It's a really good museum. I would recommend that just to get an idea of what built BC's wealth, basically.
And you can actually take a tour of the mine itself. You can go in there. You can actually go into the middle of the mountain. And a lot of it's flooded already, but you can go in that one level there. It's worth going in there and having a look. In other BC news, BC NDP MLA under fire for defending use of terms colonizer and uninvited guests for non-First Nations people. A BC NDP MLA has caused a stir in the province after defending the use of terms settler and uninvited guest. Independent MLA Dallas Brody referred to. Anyway, there you go.
Quite astonishing, I would say. I mean, it's worth listening to this speech or whatever you want to call it, this statement that was made by the NDP's MLA there, as people behind her nod somberly, because it's she tries to make almost like a rational case for what is in effect differentiating between British Columbians based on their DNA, which usually is a big no-no for people on the left like herself, but apparently not in this case. I mean, I find it really kind of creepy and weird, I have to say, because obviously I was born and raised in England. And in that country, the only people that go around talking about the indigenous and the natives and how they deserve special recognition and all the rest of it are people who are on the far right, and they're looked upon as being very dangerous people. And they're told, we're all British, get over yourself kind of thing. But then you come to Canada, it's also true in Australia, much less so in the US, but definitely true in Australia, New Zealand, and Canada. And you have people talking like this, where all of a sudden it feels like I'm listening to Goebbels or something tell me about like blood and soil. And it's like, oh no, like these are the natives, these are the indigenous people. You're just a visitor, you're like a colonizer. And it's like, I just like the language is so extraordinary. It's I did this story, didn't I, where I interviewed Alan Sturko about this because Bonnie Henry had released a report that used that language, settlers and colonizers and all the rest of it, and I did a story on it, and it was she wasn't impressed, I must say, and I spoke to a few other people who are also not impressed, but BC, I think, is kind of like the HQ of this phenomenon. It's like it's the capital of land acknowledgements and terms like this, like settler and so on. It's God knows where it's going to take the province, but I don't think it's particularly healthy.